Divine grace, Hey Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki ISKCON Devaki Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki ISKCON Farmington Hills ki all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Lord Shri Guru and Shri Prabhupada. So I have one verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which you would expect, but I have something else I'm going to preempt and forward to the class. And it's very short, a little brief description of some American history. Now, why would I do that? Anybody have a guess? 4th of July, right. We're having this three-day holiday here. And tomorrow is 4th of July, which is why we're having this 3-day holiday. And to say a few words about that, I think it's good to kind of have some idea, what's going on in the particular country that you're part of. Kids are not interested in this kind of stuff. Do we have like a upstairs? Like, is there a screen upstairs with speakers so that people can pick kids up and? Yeah. Maybe, yeah, in addition to the speakers, so let them know that they can hear upstairs. Be nice maybe to have some kind of a screen in the future so that you can feel like they're part of what's going on. So this 4th of July is also known as Independence Day. And it's been a federal holiday in the United States since 1941. Federal holiday means a government holiday, so all government offices like the post office and generally banks, although they're not government, they are also closed, and school is out. If there was a school, it would be out. And it used to be everything just kind of shut down on July 4th, but slowly but surely, consumer economics has creeped in, and so main shopping considered a shopping day now too. But the tradition of Independence Day is also known as Independence Day, as I mentioned. It goes back to the 18th century, and then back to them, to the American Revolution. So on July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. And the independence was from none other than the British. And those of you from India will resonate with that because India also used to be under the thumb of the British. And I think your Independence Day was, or your Independence came like 46?
47.
Yeah. I don't know the date, you know the date?
15th August. 15th August.
Oh, August 15th, coming right up. So, we were in July. The vote was in July, but then what happened a couple days later was that there were 13 colonies at that time. And they adopted what is known as the Declaration of Independence. It's a historic document, and it was drafted by and large by Thomas Jefferson. So from 1776 to the present day, July 4th is celebrated as the birth of American independence, with festivities as, main thing we know is boom, boom, blast, blast, fireworks, lots of concerts, casual and not so casual family gatherings, and lots of food-based get-togethers. But on June 7th, the Continental Congress met in the Pennsylvania State House, which is now immortalized as Independence Hall, and that was in Philadelphia. And the Virginia delegate, Richard Henry Lee, introduced a motion calling for the independence of the colonies. So there was a heated debate. You can imagine that, even nowadays, any little thing was a heated debate. So the good old American tradition. That Congress postponed the vote on Lee's resolution, but they appointed a 5-man committee. And I'm a member of the GBC, and these 5-man committees sound awfully familiar. And now I know where they came from. Whenever there's some contention, we have a committee to talk about things, discussing the report, the findings. So this committee included Thomas Jefferson, who was from Virginia, and then a fellow known as John Adams from Massachusetts, and a fellow known as Roger Sherman from Connecticut, and then the most probably one of the best well-known, Benjamin Franklin from Pennsylvania, and Roger Livingston from New York. They drafted a formal statement justifying the break with Britain. Have anybody here ever gone to the Philadelphia Rath Yatra Festival? So you might remember seeing Benjamin Franklin there, or at least his impersonator. And so Ben Franklin and Mahatma Gandhi, they both come to the Philadelphia Rath Yatra, and they distribute Bhagavad Gitas. So this Declaration of Independence, it was the first formal statement by a nation's people asserting the right to choose their own government. It was extremely radical. And in this case, justifying the break with Great Britain, just like we had Mahatma Gandhi in India. And it was signed on the 4th of July. So, is going to have. now there's one country, Russia, the other country, Ukraine, it's just bing bang. There's always some war, there's something else happening, I don't forget the country. But in here we have that statue, the freedom, Prabhupada called it the freedom statue, the Statue of Liberty. Like if you come in on the East Coast and you're circling around, and it's a clear day, you can see her standing. It was a gift from France to the people of America. You drive up to New York on the I-95, you'll see her there, Statue of Liberty. But Prabhupada said, where is the freedom? The general mass of people and the leaders have no idea. In the Bhagavatam, 212 in the purport, they don't know what is freedom and whose freedom. That they don't know. Therefore, they're creating so many, papers for freedom and this so-called freedom. But there is no freedom. Big leaders, they have no freedom. So therefore, Krishna points out in the Bhagavad Gita that real freedom is when you get freedom from the 4 different problems. What does that mean? This Janma Mrityu Jara Vyada Dukkha Sananam. If you get freedom from these 4 things, no more death, no more birth, no more old age, no more disease, that is freedom. But where is that freedom? Each and every one of us are feeling to some degree the effect of birth, death, disease, and old age. Sometimes I call it our secondary mantra. The main mantra is, we all know about Krishna Mahamantra, secondary mantra of birth, death, disease, and old age. So where is the freedom? Prabhupada was explaining that Krishna has imposed death. That you may make your plan as a free man, but you'll not be allowed to stay. I'll kick you out. These poor people, they don't think of it. I think it's such a nice plan, but at any moment I'll be kicked out. So where is my freedom? Prisoner is thinking he's free to act, but isn't that foolishness? The guy's in prison, someone's in prison, he's thinking he has some freedom to act. Therefore, Krishna has grouped them, these muras, these rascals, muras, that conduct the so-called freedom movement. Just like in India, Prabhupada was saying, like in our country, in India, the British Empire, the Mohammedan Empire was there, but there was no knowledge about this freedom. We're not free. They knew it. They were under the subjugation. Where was the question of freedom? When Srila Prabhupada was asked by his spiritual master on his very first meeting, I think most of you know that, he came to me and he didn't even want to go meet this person. He was being pulled by a friend. And a lot of times, if a friend invites you to do something and you're not so inclined, but you'll do it because this is your friend. So he went to meet this person, this spiritual leader, but he wasn't inclined. And then the first thing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to him was, oh, you're an educated young man. So why don't you take this mission of Mahaprabhu to the West? And Prabhupada's answer, who's going to listen to us? People from India were subjugated, as long as because he was a Gandhi follower, freedom fighter, but not fighting in the way of the passive freedom. So, no, nobody's going to listen to us. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta informed them that this Krishna consciousness cannot be impeded by any material consciousness or consideration. It's beyond this so-called subjugation. And Prabhupada was surprised. Of course, at that time he was a Vaisharam. He wasn't Prabhupada, he wasn't even a Swami. And he got a little awakenings, on that. And he told, I remember him telling us, among my friends, I was always the leader. We'd have debates and I would always win. And for the first time, I was defeated. And I liked it very much. Prabhupada was pointing out that so this idea of freedom, the freedom movement was actually coming from foreign countries. But where is the freedom? We're completely under the laws of nature. And this greater freedom to get out of the clutches of the laws of nature. That is really freedom. And he said the freedom they were going for and what I was experiencing in my freedom, so-called, marches for freedom. So we have some freedom, but it means from the frying pan into the fire. So Krishna, he says too, where's your freedom? This Janma Mritu Jara Vayana Yukadosam Darsanam. See, where's your freedom? It's like a rubber stamp. This rubber stamp freedom, will it really help us? So what are the major questions? They're setting it aside. Don't discuss these things. Prabhupada said, don't bother with these so-called false freedoms. Don't bother your head, he said, with these trifle things. Our philosophy is, don't bother with these things. Just seriously think about the major problems. This is our philosophy. What is the major problem? These birth, death, disease, and old age. Otherwise, there's no freedom. There's no real freedom. And if systematic and principled direction is given, he gave to this one person. His name was Oriental, Ho something. His name was Ho, and he wrote to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada could understand, he had some interest in Krishna consciousness, but he was also kind of wondering, how will the people, do you really think? How will the people of the world take to this? Do you really think that people of the world will take to this? And he answered him that actually, general population, they won't have interest. Just like we know from Bhagavad Gita that the interest of the materialistic general population is not going to be for spiritual life. But does that mean we should become discouraged and give up? No, keep on. And he was telling this man, this Mr. O, that if systematic and principled direction is given to daily prayer meetings, this is like 1944. So systematic direction given to these daily prayer meetings, following and to kind of like, cultivate them a little, something they can relate to, following the footsteps of Mahatmaji, meaning Mahatma Gandhi, then we can all help the concerned in subduing their evil propensities. Means when we're under the influence of material nature, we have certain tendencies, so you say evil propensities. But these are the causes of disruption in the human society at large. And when the spiritual instincts, which are the inherent qualities of every living being, are kindled by these daily prayer meetings, just like we came here today, we chanted. That's praying, this chanting is praying. Then the people in general will develop godly qualities. So Prabhupada was saying that the trust board of Mahatma Gandhi should not dismiss this lesson, coming together, chanting. And these such qualities being developed by people in general, they'll give up the habits of imitating others falsely. And they can live and act boldly and rightly. And that will bring real freedom of life, individually or collectively. So he responded like this also in a letter. He wrote a letter to Mahatma Gandhi in July of 1949. So we're free to some extent, because we're all part and parcel of the Lord, and the Lord is completely free. That's one of the qualities of Krishna, completely free. And because we're part and parcel, because we're his part and parcel, so then we have this minute freedom. And that minute freedom, when we misuse it for other purposes, then we find ourselves suffering. We don't like to suffer, but it happens. Because we minutely misuse our minute freedom. But we have that freedom to serve the Lord. So we can serve Krishna, we may not serve Krishna, that is our freedom, to serve Krishna or not. We have that freedom. But when we serve Krishna, what happens? We become happy. And that happiness is freedom. Because we're meant for that purpose. And when we don't serve the Lord, actually we become unhappy. One day, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to a Christian person, Father Tanner, and he was listening to Prabhupada speak like that. And so he goes, if I serve the Lord, do I lose that little bit of freedom? Because nobody wants to become completely under the thumb. And Prabhupada said, no, that service of Krishna is real freedom. He gave the example, just like my finger, it's part and parcel of my body. So as long as the finger is, serving the body, it's healthy. But when it's painful, or any part of the body, it becomes painful, then it's unhealthy. And similarly, when a living entity, when he's unable to serve God, then it's an unhealthy condition, because service to the Lord is the natural condition of the living entity. And when he serves God, that is the normal, natural, because we're part and parcel of Krishna. So this Krishna consciousness movement is meant for turning everyone to become a pure devotee, a pure Vaishnava. And that's the aim of the human life. And as we're discussing this, the aim of human life is to get out of the clutches of delusion, Maya, also known as Maya. This Maya, what? This repetition, birth, death, and transmigration from one body to another. So getting out of this is actually the real aim of life, the real freedom. And if we neglect this opportunity, then we're atmaha. Atmaha. Atmaha means like committing spirit. Prabhupada in one place, spiritual suicide, but also like it's type of suicide. You're killed. It's also described in the ISKCON as atmaha, as killing of the soul. So we have so many wonderful books of knowledge, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Vedanta Sutra, meaning the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Bhagavatam, an explicit narration of the Vedanta Sutra. So everyone, Prabhupada was just begging people, take advantage of this human form of life and spread this knowledge all over the world. Then the whole world can be peaceful and happy. And you would say, this is our position. The development of one's consciousness is that we should voluntarily try to become free from family affection. And that sounds like, what? That sounds horrible. But that was exactly what Queen Kuti she was praying in the 8th canto of Bhagavatam, verse 41, please, cut me from this family attachment. But the affection is not bad, it's natural. We're not stones. How can you not love your family? But we have to consider, and this is what Kunti was considering, that this affection will lead one again to another body if it's not properly utilized in Krishna service. And that's the whole point, the whole process is to get out of the bodily relations, this janma mrityu jara vidya. Then one shall become happy, real happiness, real freedom. That Kunti, she was understanding that. And for this one is spiritual knowledge, we don't know how to be free. And one purport in Bhagavatam 128, that the need of the spirit soul is he wants to get out of the limited spirit of material bondage and fulfill the desire. The spirit soul has a desire for complete freedom. You know, we're having these nice bodies, these beautiful bodies, you know. Some bodies are not as healthy as others, some bodies are not as beautiful as others, but still we're attached to our body. You know, because my body, you know, we want to be comfortable. But the need of the soul, because what is the basic lesson we get in Krishna consciousness is, we're not the body, isn't it? We're told that, we're not the body. But we have to get beyond that and find out what is my real identity. My spirit soul has a real identity. So we're going to get out of these covered walls of the greater universe. The soul's in here, and it's like, hey, let me out. I want to get out. The soul wants to see the real light, the free light in the spirit. And this complete freedom is achieved when one meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There's a dormant affection for God within all of us. And the spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and the mind in the form of the perverted reflection, perverted affection for the gross and subtle matter. So therefore, we have to engage ourselves in the occupational engagements that will actually evoke our divine consciousness, our eternal Krishna consciousness. And that is possible by hearing and chanting of the divine activities of the Supreme Lord. And any occupational duty which does not help one achieve this attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead, those activities are like a waste of time. And this is because other activities, other occupational activities, in whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation of the soul. The soul wants that liberation. So even the activities of salvation are considered useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. And the gross materialists, they can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or the next, or another. And if he goes to, come up to different planetary systems, but without that connection to the Supreme Lord, there will be no permanent abode for the soul. So the hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of devotional service. And this is what has been brought to us by Srila Prabhupada. Every living being is anxious for full freedom, just like the forefathers of the American continent. That was their thing. They were anxious for freedom because they felt unfairly treated by the British. And we see nowadays so many anxious people in any world, in any country. Everyone is desiring to get out of their predicament. get away from the subjugation that they feel is unfair. But the real freedom that they really need is this, it's obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. And we're illusioned by the external energy. Thinking sometimes somebody didn't turn their phone off. But it's a good reminder that, okay, hurry up and finish up this business of this class. Anyways, illusion by material energy, everyone is thinking in one way, I'm free. I was asked in Grand Rapids about this freedom. Are we free? What is the freedom? Very little. Very little. But still we're thinking, no, I can do this, I can do that. But very little. We're bound up by the laws of nature. And we really can't freely move from one place, either on this earth or to speak of, from one planet to another. Just like a full-fledged free soul, Narada Muni, who is always engaged in chanting the Lord's glories, free to move not only on earth but other universes, as well as any part of the spiritual sky. We can imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which was almost as good as the Supreme Lord. The transcendental system of devotional service is free, there's no charge. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after undergoing so many detailed formulas. In the same way, the association of the devotees, it's also free. We're inviting people, come here. You know, we don't have somebody at the door charging, come in, pay this, and not even go in. You don't need a wristband to come into the temple. So if the spirit soul engages in spiritual activities of devotional service, he is completely free from the platform of birth and death. And the next position is complete spiritual freedom from our wonderful material bodies. So there are different stages of devotional service and God realization. And strictly speaking, anyone who accepts the existence of God is situated in devotional service. Prabhupada made that statement. Strictly speaking, anyone who accepts the existence of God, of Krishna, is situated in devotional service. And to acknowledge that God is great is something, but not so much. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya, preaching as an acharya, a great teacher, Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Lord, in the form of the devotee, taught us that we can enter into a relationship with God and we can become God's friend, God's parent, God's lover. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna showed Arjuna his universal form, and because Krishna was his very dear friend, because you're my dear friend, yes, I'll show you this. And upon seeing Krishna as the Lord of the universe, then Arjuna realized, oh my God, Krishna, please forgive me. I was taking our friendship in a very familiar way, a casual way. So Lord Chaitanya goes even beyond this point. Through Lord Chaitanya, we can become friends with Krishna, and there will be no limit to this friendship. We can become friends of Krishna, not in awe or adoration, but in complete freedom. That's what it's found in the introduction, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We can become friends of Krishna, not in awe or adoration, but in complete freedom. And this friendship with Krishna, this complete freedom, is not going to be celebrated on July 4th by the materialistic person, because they are thinking in a very limited way. Just like they're gonna blast some fireworks. Well, we also blast fireworks. Come every weekend to New Vrindavan, we have the swan boat ride. We're Radha Vrindavan Chandra are riding the swan boat around the lake. And there's a fantastic kirtan going on, and bam, 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 and the fireworks are also going on. And then the peacock starts making their wonderful peacock sounds. You hear the peacocks. That's freedom, you know? So we're all for freedom, but we have a declaration of freedom that's not government endorsed. It's Krishna endorsed. And each and every one of them has the full right, just like in the government freedom that we have the right to liberty and pursuit of happiness. Every devotee, that's the living entity, not just Americans. And the pursuit of happiness is to serve Krishna. And that type of happiness is complete freedom. So we're having this holiday, therefore when some of us are here, maybe others are, I know that there's people in New Vrindavan celebrating the 4th of July holiday. But let's keep in mind what the actual freedom is and the benefits of expressing and experiencing freedom through serving Krishna. Anybody like any comments or has any particular questions? I don't know if somebody's hand was up for a question or they're stretching the room.
Hare Krishna, Mother Prabhu, Jai Shri Prabhu. Thank you very much and for the class. We talked about freedom and even Prabhupada mentioned that that we have only minute amount of freedom when everything comes up. So the question I have is like, okay, so if I don't own anything, nothing is mine, then what do I actually own in this whole life? What is it that I can say that, okay, this is mine, it comes with me, goes with me?
We own the right to serve Krishna. You know, I mean, that was a big thing. Like, we don't, like in the 60s, the hippies actually got to the conclusion that we don't own anything. But they didn't completely cross the bridge. They didn't know who the real owner was. So we can honestly say that we don't own anything, but we know who the owner is. And we can say we know the owner. And we'd like to know him even better than we already know him. And that's our pursuit of happiness. When the American Constitution says the right to the pursuit of happiness, it's open-ended. And then you have all these insane situations going on where your pursuit of happiness, you get wars going on and you get fights going on. People kill each other for their pursuit of happiness. But it's in our inherent right, the service of Krishna. And nobody can actually take it away from you. Under any circumstance, I know devotees who are in prison. They cannot walk out and go to the temple. But every morning they're up from Mangalarti, they're chanting Vishnu prayers, they're chanting 16 rounds, they're reading Bhagavatam, they're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they're having amazing realizations. So even though they're locked up like anything, they're quite free. That is the freedom of Krishna consciousness. That is the freedom of devotional service. And it takes a very high level of realization to actually understand this. But Krishna is guaranteeing absolute freedom through his service in the Bhagavad Gita.
I thought the answer would be like our death, like when we are born, like we have to die, so maybe that's what it talks to us. So we don't own that either.
We don't own anything, just the right to serve Krishna. But, Krishna gives us responsibilities. And so maybe the responsibility may be you own a great big house and a nice car. You own, we have these temporary ownerships, but we know that we don't own anything. Just like if you go in the drama on stage and you're playing, some role, you're not that person that you play, but you do it to the best of your ability. At the end of the day, you're back to who you were. So our ownership is something like that. We have these temporary ownerships and we have to take them to some degree seriously, responsibly. Like if you own a car, you pay your insurance, yada, yada, that kind of thing. But we know we're not the owners. And the difference between materialists is they absolutely are convinced they're the owners. And along with that ownership comes all kinds of misery and distress. So we also get misery and distress when we conflate our ownership with Krishna's ownership.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. How can we, what steps can we take to achieve that freedom of being a servant of Krishna?
It's a good question.
Hare Krishna Mahaprabhu. I had a question that what steps can we take to achieve that freedom of being Krishna's servant?
Yeah, it's called the regulative principles of freedom. So, the first step one takes is understanding that they're not this body. Because so long as we're attaching ourselves to that misconception, we're not able to get past it. I think I'm the body, and then I'm building that everything I do is building on that. So that's the first step. And the two most important things that we can do is the hearing and chanting of the Lord's holy names. And to augment that hearing and chanting, to make that hearing and chanting more substantial, then we read it, because whose name? We're chanting about Krishna, okay, Krishna, I know your God, but so then we read about Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaking, that's his words. Bhagavatam, particularly like Krishna book, the Prabhupada is just giving these really amazing descriptions of Krishna, what he's doing, how he's doing it, what he's wearing. The Goswamis have written, where there's one Goswami, pardon me, I can't remember, his description of Krishna is so complete, it's right down to his aroma, how he smells, and it's wonderful. So, some camphor and musk and sandalwood mixed together, So the reading helps us in our hearing and chanting, because it gives us some visualization and some, intellectual understanding, which becomes purified, and then it just becomes our reality in the end. And the reality of Krishna is so pleasing and so complete that it starts to displace the temporary realities. And then you might think, oh my God, but if that happens, how am I going to live in this world? Don't worry, you'll be okay. Devotees have a very wonderful intelligence because of Krishna consciousness. So your intelligence is actually being used in the right way. So Krishna gives you this intelligence. So if you have any hesitancy, well, how will I manage? You'll manage very well because Krishna is your friend. And he's going to give you the intelligence you need to deal with your life in this world as his devotee.
I have a follow-up question. So you said that we have to read, chant, listen. So how do we acquire taste for reading, chanting, and listening? How do we acquire taste to read, chant, and listen?
It's a good question. How do we acquire a taste for reading and chanting? I don't think anybody here smokes or has smoked, but I mean, you know how nasty it smells. Can you imagine what it tastes like? People do it. So I don't imagine the first time they did it, it was so good, and they just keep doing it until pretty soon they're even addicted. So it's a very gross example, but in the same way, we have to put a little pressure on ourselves sometimes. Not enough to crack us up, but a little pressure. Hey, has your mother ever given you medicine and said this is good for you? Or maybe she wants you to eat something you don't like, and she'll say, but it's good for you, right? So it is good for us. So a little bit of pressure has to be there, a little persistence, a little determination. You know? Okay, I'll take a teaspoon a day of this, whatever it is. Okay, I'm gonna read a few pages a day. And then you might find yourself, maybe you're reading 5 pages a day, and then one day you're reading 6 because, wow, this is kind of interesting. You know? And another thing is to talk about it with others. You know what I read today? Discuss it with others. And that increases the inclination. So I think it's now time to have announcements and
Thank you very much, Malti Prabhu, for wonderful talks and helping us understand the meaning of actually freedom. Thank you very much. From an announcement perspective, again, I want to reiterate that please sign up for picnic next Saturday, July 9th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's happening very close from here in Mayberry Park. It's an amazing opportunity to come together, have fun, also hear class, amazing prasadam outside, right? So do not miss this wonderful opportunity. It's a wonderful, time that we all can spend together and know each other. It's open for everyone, different age groups, so everyone is welcome. You can bring your friends and family as well. And details are given on our event page. Also, email circulation also happening. WhatsApp group messages also being circulated, and also register. There's a way to register so that we know who's coming and we can plan accordingly. And it's free. Yes. Yes, there's no charge. All we need is
it's a freedom picnic.
It's a free prasadam is being served outside. So please do not leave without honoring Krishna prasadam. Thank you. Yes, Malti Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you very much for coming today. Maybe we can quickly chant one little quick prayer. You know which one I'm talking about? We can chant it all together. 1, 2, 3. Sarva Vijaya Kendriya Chalaya
Say Ananda Bhau Radha Krishna Vrindavan. Jai Jai Ma Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada. I had the car here because I carried this, and then so I'm gonna. I had this car because I had to carry this.
One very important thing that Regulation Prabhu is suggesting, anyone who wants to celebrate their or their loved ones, family members' birthday, they can give the details to Roninandan Prabhu. He's making a centralized database. Again, your information is not going to go out, so you won't get any spam or nothing like it. You don't have to worry about privacy or any details. But please share your birthdays, and every Sunday feast we are trying to have combined birthday celebration to invoke the blessings of all the devotees. So please give your details to Roninandan Prabhu. He's collecting the details. And everyone will get a chance to cut the birthday cake. Offered to Radha Gopi Chandra.
I have to run because I'm
There's like do something, do it. Do it. Tomorrow I'll call. Someone will call you. Then otherwise it will. Mother, can you?
Oh, okay, we might see it there, actually. We might. I was like, let's do the Raphael, let's do the double dinner today. Because I'm out of work, you know, I'm so relaxed. And we were in school until like, I just got out. And our people looks like I'm kind of like, we here, we had babies on, and like yesterday I was working. It was very and so actually, a lot of people said this, so you can explain all the conversation, like you're in the 4th of July parade. So it's like.
And wait, I think there's 2 questions in the chat. The chat says.